Thursday's presidential debate will be a bit different after the last one was described as chaotic. The Commission on Presidential Debates released a statement saying both President Trump and Joe Biden will have 2 minutes of uninterrupted time at the beginning of each segment. To enforce that rule, the candidate whose turn it is not will have their mic muted. The mics will then be opened after the 2 minutes for open discussion. During the first debate, President Trump interrupted Biden over 70 times. For more on this, I want to bring in Sean Sullivan. He's a CBSN political contributor and national politics reporter for The Washington Post. Welcome, Sean. Great to see you. So could this change to the debate help prevent the rather chaotic nature of the debate we saw last time?
Well, Tanya, that's what debate organizers hope, because when we look at the last debate, we never saw anything like this in the history of presidential debates. Before, you saw the president routinely interrupting Joe Biden. It was hard to keep a conversation going on any given topic. And so that prompted these organizers to say, all right, what can we do this time around? And it seems like they've come up with a solution they think can work. They're going to divide the debate up into 15-minute segments. So you're going to have 6 segments that focus on different issues. And the idea is to allow each of these candidates 2 minutes to sort of state their case at the very beginning where they won't be interrupted. The question, though, is what happens after that 2 minutes? Are we going to see a more chaotic back and forth between Vice President Biden and President Trump? Is it going to be hard to maintain any semblance of order? Is it going to be hard to keep the debate focused on the topics that the moderators and the organizers want the debate to be focused on? So it looks like this is going to bring some measure of order to the situation, but there's still a lot of questions about how this will go and whether this debate might also go off the rails.
Right. All right, Sean, we also want to ask you, though, about Joe Biden's schedule. There aren't many events this week, despite how close we are to the election. Why is that? You would think this would be the final push time.
There really aren't any events, and this is something I think political observers on both sides have noticed this week. You know, Biden doesn't have anything on his schedule public event-wise today. Yesterday, he did an interview but didn't have anything else. He was in North Carolina on Sunday, and then Saturday was another quiet day. My sources are telling me that he's preparing for this debate on Thursday. The campaign sees this as a really important moment. It's really the last chance we're going to see President Trump and Joe Biden on the same stage in front of the American people. And so they want to make sure that he's prepared. So he's hunkering down, he's meeting with advisors. But, you know, you're right. We are exactly 2 weeks away from this election. And typically you don't see candidates this quiet, this close to an election. You'll see candidates hold events around the country usually. Now, there have been limits on the events that these candidates can do because of the pandemic. But it is still a bit unusual to see a candidate this close to an election have this type of schedule, even though there's a debate coming up on Thursday.
So, yeah, let's quickly talk about the polls, Sean, because it seems that Biden is doing well in the polls. Our CBS News Battleground Tracker has Biden leading. But is there anxiety in the Democratic Party about a repeat of what happened in 2016?
Most definitely there is anxiety. A lot of Democrats across the country I'm talking to are looking at these polls right now. They're getting nervous, and they feel like this reminds them of 2016 happening all over again. When they think back to that election, they say, look, we were pretty confident going into the final 2 weeks. The polls looked pretty good for Hillary Clinton. We felt like we had a lot of enthusiasm. And then we were all shocked when she lost. That's the view that a lot of Democrats have. And so they're starting to be reminded of that right now. Now, the Biden campaign is trying to tap into this in a way that they think will help them. They're trying to tell voters, hey, don't get complacent. Don't believe polls that show, you know, that Biden is winning by this wide margin, that President Trump can't catch up. They're trying to rally their base and say, look, we cannot let up right now. But there's certainly a sense of nervousness from a lot of Democrats, just because in their view, this looks very similar to the situation that we saw 4 years ago. Now, of course, a lot has changed. You have an incumbent president who's very, very unpopular in President Trump versus Joe Biden, who's a challenger. So it's not an open race like it was 4 years ago. But again, a lot of Democrats I talk to say, wow, this really, really looks similar. We feel like we've seen this TV show before, and we don't want to live through it again.
So, Sean, one thing that we haven't seen before is the sheer numbers of ballots that are being sent by mail this election cycle, right, due to the pandemic. So can you remind our viewers how different this year's election night or week, may look. When are we going to have the results by? Month? How long might this drag out?
Yeah, we don't really know that yet, but for viewers tuning in on election night who are going to be watching the networks, who are going to be watching these returns, if they're expecting that we are guaranteed to know the winner of the election on that night, that is just simply not the case at this point. Now, we don't know, exactly when we might know the winner. It's possible we will know the winner on election night, but we're in a very different situation right now. And as you point out, Tanya, a lot of people voting by mail. There are a lot of people who are going to be casting their ballots remotely, millions, in fact. And so the time it takes to process those ballots, to count those ballots, to count the ballots that are coming in at the very last minute might mean that in some of these states that are considered the battleground states, if the race is really, really tight, we might not know who the winner is in those states, and therefore we might not know who the winner is in the overall electoral college, which I think a lot of people are going to understand quickly is very different than what we've seen in the past. Now, again, it depends on the margins, it depends on the states, it depends on what happens, but there is a very real chance at this point that when people wake up the day after the election, they might not know who the winner is just yet, just because of the amount of time it's going to take to tally these ballots that are coming in by the mail, because record numbers of people not wanting to go to the polls, wanting to stay safe, and so they're doing it from their own house. They're casting their ballots remotely, trying to stay safe, trying to shield themselves from the pandemic.
It will certainly be an election like we've never seen, just by virtue of that. All right, well, Sean Sullivan, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.